Let's see. Let's see. So, what were you thinking yesterday, man?
Man, I was frustrated. I mean, just you go through the up. Here we go with the slow start again, the first quarter, um, and then you go with the okay second quarter. We coming out blazing. Now we look like number two team in the country. We got to figure it out, and then just at halftime, kind of same story that has been kind of plaguing OU for what seems like years now is mental focus for whatever reason dips and leaves, and a 37-14 halftime lead turns into a 40-35 win that 1 yard potentially short of them having the momentum and finishing that drive. Like when they got the onside kick, I told my group chat, I said we might lose this game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. That was the first time I was nervous for y'all, but when they got that onside kick, I was actually scared for the first time. Aaron, thank you for hopping in here, man. For everybody watching, for anybody just coming in, I have with me today Indy Sooner. If y'all don't subscribe to his channel, by all means, please go do so. I'm gonna link that in the comments when we're all done with this. A great up and comer in the YouTube community for Oklahoma content, really has a bright future ahead. And this is my first live stream, so I can't tell you how much it means for you to drop in and do this and be a part of this in a week one that was just crazy. But given that it was your Sooners, man, I do have some questions, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Coming off of that week, how do you view things going forward?
I think that, especially after sleeping on it, people freak out, overreactions, right? Everybody always overreacts to week one. But I think that moving forward, we just have to really focus on mentally focusing. Like, and I think that was the difference was like the second quarter that we were just talking about. We obviously said, okay, we're the number two team in the nation. Let's act like it, right? The focus was there from the offensive standpoint. The focus was there from the defensive standpoint. Now, I thought the offensive line was terrible the whole game, personally. But Rattler didn't make it easy on him. Even in the third quarter, like everybody wants to say, Riley got conservative. I don't think that was Riley's fault. Couldn't run the ball because the offensive line was not pushing anybody. And then on top of that, Rattler missed throws he normally doesn't miss, which is when his second interception happened and he missed Stogner, and then he missed Woods another time on the sideline, just throws he normally makes, and just stalled drives out. And then you're three and outing. I mean, probably maybe 3 or 4 possessions in a row. We had three and outs, and then you get your defense back on there, and they're exhausted. So I'm not as mad at the defense. It wasn't great per se, but I don't blame them as much as I blame the offense stalling. So
That's actually really interesting, man, because I think there's something to that. And to Rat's credit, he said people slept on Tulane's passing offense. He said that said the tackling was kind of rough for you boys, which
yeah,
definitely
that's
the
true.
second part is true. There's absolutely no way around that. But
Yeah,
I do want to hit on that first part because one thing it's so easy for us right now to say, oh, you didn't do this well, oh, you didn't do this well. Before we get into all that, let's talk about what was done well, specifically by Tulane, right?
yeah,
Tulane came out and schemed a hell of a game yesterday. I mean, they knew what they wanted to do and they were able to do it. So hats off to Tulane for being
absolutely.
able to scheme, right? That was great.
Hmm.
To your point, I might be a bit more disappointed in the defense, but I can absolutely understand where you're coming from, where your
Yeah.
calling card has been offense for so long.
Mm.
Right. And it's one of those things where if you just look at the end of the stat line, right? Spencer has 30 of 39, 304 yards, 7.8 average. You might see that and think, okay, well, we had a good day.
Yeah.
But it was to your point, it never looked right. It never fully came together. Things were being missed. The throws that were on target weren't on target in the way that would allow for the receivers to really maximize what they were given.
Yep.
But that being said, at least you settled in and got the W out.
Yeah.
On the defense, what were you probably most surprised about?
I think I was most surprised initially at the lack of a pass rush, in the first quarter, at least, because we've been hyping up our defensive line all year, and I feel like rightfully so. I mean, they did a really great job last year. I think we were top 10 in sacks, as well last year, and so you have Nick Benito, who a lot of people have as one of the best pass rushers, if not the best pass rusher in the country, depending on who likes Kayvon Thibodeau or not, and obviously prayers out to him with what happened yesterday.
Absolutely.
But again, Nick Bonito is a monster. We knew that coming in. You got Perion Winfrey, who ascended at the end of last year. You got Jalen Redmond coming back, who was the leader in sacks in 2019. It didn't play last year at all in 2020 and looked really good yesterday. Guys, they had Thomas, who had 9.5 sacks last year, coming back, and that's just there. And then you got Reggie Grimes behind him, right? That was a consensus 4-star recruit. Bama and Tennessee were in on him, and he decided to come to Oklahoma. You got Clayton Smith, 5-star recruit at
Hey, I
Texarkana,
really
right?
like him.
I mean, it's loaded, right? And just to see a lack of pass rush early on was really surprising to me. And like I said, they picked it up later. I think that was the only surprising thing to me. I said, if you go back to my linebacker preview in the spring, I said I think the linebacker group is the worst group on our team. Now, the defensive backs may have something to say about that now, but the linebackers, in my opinion, played really, really bad yesterday. I didn't think they were good in coverage. I thought they were terrible in their run fits. Terrible in their run fits. And so I don't want to be right on that, but it just looked like it yesterday. I think there's talent there, and I thought maybe they can prove me wrong because I saw all these articles about like we got David Gueba, which is true. Deshaun Watts looking the best he's ever looked, which that's the second year in a row we've heard that, and he still didn't look that great yesterday. I think the talent's there, but it just doesn't seem like it's formulating as of yet. It's just the first game, but even still, I was disappointed in that.
No, man, for an instant reaction, I think to your point, you hit the nail on the head because when I look at the stat sheet right now, I mean, you have it to where, and like Frightening says, he says Tulane isn't expected to win its own conference, and that may be, right? Tulane might not have that same game, but when you have a team that had the whole offseason to prepare for OU, I mean, it definitely showed that they really schemed well. They took their time in the offseason and applied it unbelievably well. That's why I do say hats off to Tulane. But
Absolutely.
getting back to your point about the linebackers, if I had to pick two areas yesterday that I thought didn't play up to par for Oklahoma, it was the secondary and the linebackers. The linebackers were attacked consistently with pre-snap motion, getting the tight end out in space, getting the running back out in space, and that really never came together. To be fair, we've seen in the past few years of college football, that's the new way of attacking these defenses, man, going right after those linebackers, but it just wasn't up to par. And the secondary, it's not necessarily the end of the world when your leading tackler is a safety, but it's not good when 4 or 5 of your top 6 tacklers are all secondary players, right?
Yep.
Like that shows that something happened where they got through those first 2 lines. Mm-hmm. But, I do agree. The pass rush and the line came together a bit later. Tulane averaged, that is 3.1 yards rushing. I think that's an indication that OU at least came alive in that front. And, I've seen people say Tulane's quarterback cannot be feeling good today. I mean, that dude took a beating.
A beating. Bad. I mean, when Key Lawrence, I thought Key Lawrence was gone, right? That the hit he laid on him when he was right before he was about to slide, I was like, oh, he's gone out of there. Man, that sucks. But then on the replay, it was clean. I was like, wow. Can't believe that was clean. I can't believe that guy Pratt came back in there and balled the way he did. I mean, he outplayed Spencer Rattler. He did. He made tight window throws. He made throws right on the money. He was mobile. He looked really good. I was
Very
really impressed with him.
Yeah. That's why I say I don't want to have this come out like I'm trying to make an excuse for OU. They should have played much better than they did yesterday. But I also don't want this to sound like we're not giving Tulane any credit because Absolutely. Tulane, they identified someone has a really good Rat has a really good take right here. He said, take the Alabama Ole Miss game last year where Alabama was the superior team, but Ole Miss hit them right where it hurt over and over and over. And it was just a scheme thing. And I think that that's a really true indication for Oklahoma that they just hit a team that had schemed and planned a great game. But there are still things to take away from. And hats off to you, man, because I do remember you doing that video about the linebackers. I was a bit more questioning the linebacker play for OU because I didn't know what direction it would go. But I absolutely remember you put out that video. You hit the nail on the head, man. You called it. And the secondary, I think the only good news is you do have some young pieces in that secondary that will come up together, and the pass rush as it grows will help that secondary out. But I was expecting that Oklahoma defense to be a bit more stout. And at one point I believe Booming Sooners podcast, I was talking with them. I told him, if OU can hold them under 21, and this is when Tulane had 14, I think we can walk away from this game feeling very comfortable if you're an OU fan.
Yeah.
If not, I wouldn't be concerned, but there are some things to look at, right? And it's going to be interesting going forward. Now, how do you feel about the offense going forward? Because Oklahoma only had 3.3 yards average rushing on offense, which was a big surprise.
Yeah. So, obviously anybody who's been following Oklahoma in the last 6 months has known we've had a hell of a year when it comes to the running back room and position. Lost Seth McGowan and Mikey Henderson to just boneheaded foolishness, right? And in the spring. And then, we lost Trey Bradford, just I guess decided he wanted to go back to LSU.
That's a strange situation in its entirety for sure.
Right. Correct. And obviously, TJ Pledger headed out or whatnot to Utah, which is fine because at the time, like our running back room was loaded. Marcus Major out of nowhere has academic ineligibility issues nobody knew about, or at least the general public didn't know about. And so now he's gone for the year. And so now we have 2 scholarship running backs, right? Eric Gray, Kenny Brooks. And so I think a lot of people thought early on, Rattler's going to throw at least 35, 40 times, and he did. You saw a lot of screens, you saw a lot of swing passes, etc. Trying to get that short game going, so we didn't have to run as much. And even then, I'm not sure it was as much necessarily about us only having 2 scholarship running backs as it was about maybe how Lincoln Riley thought the offensive line was performing. Because like I said, they were getting blown. I love Congle, right? Great guy.
Man, they attacked him.
Oh my gosh, he got blown up so much yesterday, so much, and it just destroyed any chance we had of doing any RPOs or even doing any of our GT counters that we normally do that you see from us. It made everything worse, and our offense is predicated off the run game as much as everybody thinks it's air raid. No, like we like to get down and dirty, get to business. When we can't do that, there's not a ton that we can do on top of Rattler maybe missing some throws or missing reads. When I was just rewatching some film right before I came here, and me and my wife were talking, and it was the first interception he threw. He threw it deep to Marvin Mims and Eric Gray.
Flat.
Oh, Eric Gray's wide open in the flat. At least 10 to 15.
And that's your most versatile running back in the flat, ready to go.
And my wife was like, "Why did he throw that?" I said, "Babe, I don't know. I don't know why he did it. I don't know if he thought that there was no safety over top, or that, obviously we've seen that plenty of times where it has a leaker coming across and then Marvin just darts up. That's a Lincoln Riley concept, right? That leak concept. It wasn't there, right? It wasn't there at all. And they were waiting for it. And if he hits Eric Gray in the flag, you get 15, maybe 20. Who knows what happens? But that again is what I think is another evolution of Spencer Rattler. But to get back to your point about the running game, again, I think it was the offensive line, just that it wasn't there. And maybe you can give some credence to the fact that we only have 2 scholarship running backs, and we probably weren't going to use them too much anyway against the Tulane, and even next week against the Western Carolina, we're expected to beat. But I get concerned a little bit moving forward that if that offensive line doesn't gel, what are we gonna look like?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what the takeaway I had, because I knew that there would be some sparing play from the running back room. When you only have 2 scholarship running backs on week 1, it just makes sense to do it that way. So I wasn't too surprised there, but I think you hit the nail on the head on the offensive line. Rame should be a huge addition to that offensive line. I would certainly hope so. But, just sticking on Rattler before we kind of move forward, that kind of doubles back. I don't know if you ever saw Quarterback Spotlight and I got together and we did a video on Rattler. And it's so interesting when you're talking about Rattler, because most guys, they have to learn how to succeed. Rattler almost has to learn how to fail, because throughout his entire high school career, he's been used to being so talented that he can take those shots and get away with it. And now they're in a position where you're in college, you can't just rely on pure talent anymore. And you see him have to learn how to fail. Now, I'm very interested to see how he bounces back. Luckily, Lincoln Riley is there. that's you couldn't ask for anybody better with a quarterback. But it was a little bit surprising. Now, the ultimate good thing, in my opinion, for Oklahoma is, what did you think about the rest of the Big 12?
I think that Iowa State didn't look great. I thought Kansas State looked pretty good, which worries me a little bit.
Hey, Deuce Vaughn is that guy, man. He's so
that
cold.
dude.
He's so cold.
I actually thought Texas looked good.
Texas looked good. They did.
I thought they looked good. And I'm not saying Louisiana was overrated. I'm not going to say that. But regardless, they did what they needed to do, right? It doesn't matter. If you think they're overrated or not, they did what they needed to do. They took care of business. Bijan Robinson is a monster.
Oh my God, he's so cold, man.
I don't like Texas, but I have no problem giving props where it's due.
Real is real. Absolutely.
That man's nasty. West Virginia, Oklahoma State didn't look good, right? Did Baylor play yesterday? I don't think I even saw Baylor play yesterday.
I'll have to check right now. I have all the games up, but the one that really surprised me, man, is Iowa State.
They did not look good.
They didn't look good. And Brock Purdy, I'm interested in hearing from chat too. And Dominic, we're going to get to this right here in a little bit right here, because this is a really good topic I think we need to hit.
I'd like to answer that question too.
Yeah. So Brock Purdy, you remember last year when the year started? I mean, you're talking heads on ESPN and stuff, and rightfully so. Brock Purdy was coming off of a really solid year. He was being talked about as a fringe first-round quarterback. He goes out there last year, does not have a good year, and backs it up yesterday, where if you look at the stats without looking at his yards, you'd think, okay, he had a solid game. It never came together for Iowa State. And probably most concerning is you're looking at it, and Breece Hall, what did he have? What was the average rushing on Breece Hall? 3 yards a carry, right?
20 attempts for 60 yards, something like that.
23 for 69, 3 yards average. That worries me, especially if I'm an Iowa State fan. But I want to go ahead and let you address this right here about what's going on with Lincoln Riley's mind after these games. We're up 2 touchdowns and have no urgency in the second half.
And I completely get that, and I've seen that, and that's what I was talking to you about earlier, Ty. Was I've seen that a lot happen. I don't know that I would say that that's what happened yesterday. Here's why. And even some games last year, I think that people give Lincoln Riley so much crap because they're like, well, why are you running? Why aren't you being aggressive? Why aren't you passing? And then if he passes, they're like, run the ball. There's people just don't get happy. They don't really know what they want from him. But I also think that sometimes his players just don't perform. If Mike Woods catches the ball yesterday on that slant, or the ball pops out of his hand, that's an extra touchdown. If Mario Williams catches the fade route where Spencer actually is probably his best money throw of the day, where it's right here in his hands, if he catches that, that's another touchdown. That was in the first half. But that's just what I'm saying is there are these moments, and that happened last year all the time, where there's just not execution, there's not mental focus on the part of the players, and it comes back on Lincoln like he's being conservative. He wasn't conservative at all yesterday. He went for it on 4th down 3 times, right? Which is normally not what we see. We just had 3 and out after 3 and out because our offensive line played like trash and we couldn't get any run game going. And then Spencer Rattler missed throws he normally doesn't miss. So I really don't think that it was Lincoln being conservative yesterday. I think it was the players' mental focus being off, which is why we went 3 and out 3 times in a row. If you want to put that on Riley and just say hey, he didn't get them up, that's fine. But I don't think it was his play calling that was conservative, unless you want him to do an end around, every 3 possessions or something like that, which, he's not going to open the playbook for Tulane. So
if I'm not mistaken, I think the most telling stat from OU's game yesterday offensively, and I could be wrong on this, but I think they were 4 of 12 on 3rd down conversions yesterday.
Yep.
And that's just not something we're seeing. And look, we can say, Riley maybe came out a little conservative, and maybe there is a hint of truth to that. Mm-hmm. But I do agree with you where I don't think that really tells the whole story as to what happened right there, right? It was a perfect storm of a lot. I think that more questions to me need to be asked about the defense than of Lincoln Riley right now, right? Because that's really what ultimately kind of was a bit of a letdown yesterday. And I say that kind of light. Now, Tim thinks that if y'all score less than 56 and allow more than 10 against WCU, then you're not the team we thought, and you'll have a bunch of losses. Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas. Look, I hear you. It's very easy to jump off right now because it wasn't a banner game. It's early. The whole of college football outside of Alabama, and we're going to talk about that, struggled. The whole of college football.
Yep.
So there's that. And OU kind of has this weird tendency of playing up to their opponent, right?
Yep.
Like, and most teams do. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, we do that all the time. We either play down or we play up, unfortunately. And you know, I think we'll figure it out. Western Carolina's not even a good FCS team, so I think we'll probably drop 60. I think you'll see a lot of the backups, Caleb Williams in particular. I think we'll get a lot in the second half next week. I can't imagine Western Carolina score more than 10. If they do, then I don't know. And here's one more point I did want to make before we move on. To not push back necessarily against your defense point, because the defense was a little disappointing. When we get 3 turnovers
and 100%
and get 6 points out of it, that's especially 2 turnovers in their area, like in plus territory, and we don't score touchdowns like that. That is, to me, that's why I'm more on the offense, because I'm like,
and that's completely
the defense
fair.
have talked about this. Like Alex Grinch said, turnovers equal way, or takeaways equal victory, and you got 3, and that's what it's for. Like I don't think Alex Grinch ever promised, and not that obviously we don't want to have a top 10 defense or that he's not wanting to get that culture ingratiated, but the main point was if OU's offense has extra possessions, that's all they need.
That's
right?
a great point.
That's what we were told, because our offense with Baker and Kyler, imagine if they had extra possessions like that. It would have been over for people. But with the offense we have right now, they're not capitalizing. The focus is not there. They're like, Spencer's not making the right decision. The offensive line was not there yesterday. And so we have to learn how to capitalize on that. If the defense is going to give us that, even if somehow they end up giving up 30 points a game, which they're not, I don't believe they're going to. I really don't. But if they give up 30 plus or I can't talk, I'm sorry, 30 plus points a game,
I'm the king of that.
And we have 3 to 4 takeaways per game, we should be fine. We should be winning every game. There should be no problem based on what our offense should be and what it projects to be, is what I'm saying. So
no, that makes a lot of sense. And you know, to add a point for you, then you look on the flip side and your offense gave away turnovers as well, which also puts your defense in a disadvantageous position. So
absolutely.
I do. That is a really good point, man. That is a really solid point. Jacob asks, so what's up with LSU? Was it just inexperience, or did Joe Brady just really scheme the best we've ever seen? Well, let's talk about LSU, man, because I got a lot I could say about this, man. Like, this is wild.
LSU had one of the greatest seasons in college football history. Everybody left, and Joe Brady left too. I think Joe Brady is a great offensive mind, obviously. But more than that, I think that team, they just, more than any team I've seen in a while, made tough catches. Like their wide receivers, their skill position players made tough catches. Joe Burrow consistently made the right decisions, right? Yeah. He was great in the pocket. But even the game against Oklahoma, right, where we got blown out 63-28, as much as like I want to say, oh, it was all busted coverage, it wasn't. Like, we just got sunned. Like, we just
That's
got
what they
sunned.
did to everybody.
Like,
that's what they did to everybody.
It's what they did. Terrence Marshall, Jamar Chase, what's the other one? Justin Jefferson are just sunning our defensive backs. Our defensive backs are there, hand in their face. They're just that's what it was all season. So like, as much as Joe Brady does deserve credit, the players deserve credit too, and that's where like we get into why I'm talking about the Lincoln Riley stuff. Lincoln Riley, everybody knows, is the consensus probably best play caller in the nation, or at least best offensive schemer in the nation, and has been for a while now. Yeah, has been for a while now, and everybody knows that. So it's like, okay, when you have one of those, is it really them or is it the players? And so you look at Joe Brady and LSU in 2019, as good as Joe Brady was at calling plays, it's not like he was scheming everybody wide open all the dang time. At some point, they had to go and make plays, and they did, right? Yeah, he gave them advantageous situations where he had, Terrence Marshall on a linebacker that couldn't hope to cover him or anything like that. But Jamar Chase just made tough catches.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson made tough catches. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a monster. Like,
Unbelievable.
that's what happens, and that's why players win you the game, right? So you can scheme up as much as you want, but the players have to have a mental focus to go out there and do it. So LSU, for whatever reason, they just haven't had that. Their quarterback play, I thought it was obviously going to drop off after Joe Burrow. Clearly it has, too. Obviously they have good skill position players, or decent at least, but it's, unless they get a good quarterback in there, I don't see it going well for them.
You know what's so wild about this? I don't know if anybody saw. I did my top 5 games before the week started for this week, and my honorable mention was this game, UCLA versus LSU. And the reason was I picked UCLA to lose the game, so I was obviously wrong. But in my defense, I'm looking at it saying, okay, well, UCLA just had a really tough showing and a really, really great outing against Hawaii. Their rushing attack was unbelievable, but they really struggled throwing the football. I'm looking at LSU, and you look at the talent they have, and I'm thinking you can't be one-dimensional against LSU. They're just going to load the box, and you're going to have a bad time. And boy, was I wrong, because UCLA did whatever they wanted, really. I mean, the running backs, if I told you that LSU averaged 2 yards a rush against UCLA, what would you tell me?
That Trey Bradford should have stayed at Oklahoma.
No, honestly, like, and meanwhile, UCLA's averaging 5.2 yards a pop. Like, you want to know what happened. That's what happened. And I think the crux to position of all of this is Ed O is supposed to be a trenches guy. You're supposed to be a trenches guy, and your running backs average 2, and the other team has 5.2 yards per carry when you just got a 5-star defensive tackle. I'm not saying that fixes everything. It certainly doesn't, right? It certainly doesn't. But you're more talented than UCLA. You got 2 of the best cornerbacks in the nation on your team, and it was just not a good outing. And it almost makes me wonder, like, how much pressure do you think is on Ed O? Because if you go back, man, I don't know how much stock a lot of people will put in this, but I made a video about this last year when Alabama beat LSU. That I thought that it was very telling that when you looked around the landscape of college football and we had all of the social justice marches, Lane Kiffin's marching with Ole Miss, Nick Saban's marching with Alabama, Ed Orgeron shows up to practice and half of his team isn't there. They didn't even tell him about the organized march. To me, that was an indication that, like, your team may respect you as a football coach, but you don't have the room in the way you would expect a coach that's kind of a rah-rah guy and a great galvanizer to have the room, which was always really surprising to me. Like, it was just very surprising to me that they could go out there and be beat the way they were. Now, props to Chip Kelly. Props to Chip Kelly, because 2 games in a row, they look sensational. They look really, really good. But LSU, man, that's about as surprised as I've been in a team. I thought they might struggle, but I just didn't see them struggling to this degree. What do you think about them going forward? Do you think this is something that can be fixed, or is this an indication of a big problem?
I don't know, man. Like, you'd like to think it's something that can be fixed, but it's the mentality, right? And as somebody said earlier when we were talking about Oklahoma, you got to have a physicality about you in games like that, in any game really, but especially in a game where you're in Los Angeles. It's UCLA may not be a premier program per se, but they're playing in a stadium where really it was a home game for you, because people don't go to football games for UCLA for whatever reason. And I don't know if you're resting on your laurels, or you thought that, we're SEC, so we're just different than the Pac-12, or what it was. But like you said it best, man, for you to average 2 yards a carry on the offensive side of the ball and then defensive side of the ball, give up 5 is bad. And again, like our man Bruin Walker right here saying, Zach Charbonnet has been a monster for UCLA. He's been a dude. He's been a dude for them.
Hey, and Bruin Walker, you said I was wrong. You're 100% right. I was wrong. And I have What does that dude say in Waterboy when they're all standing outside the hospital and they get that guy and he says, "I am not a proud man."
Yeah.
That's me, man. I got
Yeah.
no qualms admitting when I was wrong, and I was wrong. I was dead wrong about this game. And to y'all's point in the chat, he says again, UCLA offensive line was more physical than SEC LSU. You're right.
Facts.
You're right.
Facts.
You're not going to find a single argument from me. You're 100% right, man. I mean, great outing to your Bruins. I just don't know what else to say. LSU's in a bit of trouble, though. I mean, I think they really are. But now, man, I want to talk about your reaction to seeing Alabama versus Miami. What'd you think about that?
I told somebody earlier in the day because they asked me, hey, what do you think about? They asked me, what do you think about the Alabama Miami matchup? You think Miami's gonna be back? Do you think? I was like, no, I don't. They're gonna get blown out. I said they're gonna get blown out, and not necessarily because Miami's terrible. I'm not saying that, but it's just something. Nick Saban has something in the water down there that he has just perfected the art of not allowing his team to just have mental lapses. It doesn't matter who they play, right? They've come out and played Miami. They were supposed to play USC last year, right? Did they end up playing that game?
No, they didn't end up, but they played them a few years ago, and it
right. They're going to play Texas in the next couple of years. I mean, they don't care, and it's almost a foregone conclusion. You don't expect Bama to falter in their first game, no matter who they're playing, and it's this standard that's been set. And really, the rest of college football, I think, is just looks up. As much as I hate saying that, it's just the truth. And so I knew that they were going to get blown out. Bryce Young looked really good. He looked better than I thought he was going to look. He looked poised, calm, knew what he was doing. Their defense looked good. You know what I mean? I didn't see any ramifications for what people thought was iffy defense last year, and they thought maybe it's going to be the same thing this year. That's why some people said, new quarterback, still not sold on their defense. We'll have to see. Maybe this is not Bama's year. Man, I don't know. After what they did, right? Like I was the first one I have a Bama friend I was talking to. I said, look, man, if OU is in the SEC, they have Bama's number this year. I said that. I had no problem because we have a returning Heisman contender, potential first round pick. Our defense is in the third year. Alex Grant. I've been saying this for years. This is going to be our year, and it still could be. But if you're going to take how both teams looked yesterday, Bama got that. I said, there's a gap. There's a clear gap right now. And yeah, so no, I knew Bama was probably going to take Miami out. I don't know if Miami's ever going to be able to bounce back to what they were.
Miami coming into this game, I talked about discipline for Miami, and to be fair, like they didn't kill themselves with penalty, but it's just, to your point, they never looked in sync. And the coaching staff had said time and time again that they're looking to run this scheme and that scheme, but they're never actually going out there and doing it. It's the same schemes we've seen for the past few years from Miami. It's not evolving. If I could take anything away from Alabama that maybe needed to be worked on, the offensive line is a work in progress, losing 3 starters. That's natural. It's going to come together, but it's just about when. And, I didn't feel as confidently in saying that until I watched that Georgia game last night. And Georgia had a lot of trouble on offense, but that defensive front for Georgia, man, I'm looking at that thinking, okay, well, that's real. That's legit. That defensive front was legit. I was very surprised, I think, about how, even I thought Bryce Young would be fantastic. I thought he'd be great. But Bobby Wagner right here, he hit the nail on the head. He said Bryce looked like a 5th-year senior the way he had control of that offense yesterday and the arm talent. The arm talent I knew. I've been talking about the off-platform, all that's what Bryce does. But the confidence and the poise to step up in the pocket, it was really sensational yesterday. Now, we got a lot of things in the chat saying Tulane would beat LSU. From Bama wants Bishop Sycamore. What do you think about that? Tulane or LSU?
Hey, Troy went in there a couple of years and beat him. So no, but I think Tulane is better than a lot of people are giving them credit for. Their quarterback, like we talked about earlier, he's just tough as nails. and is not afraid to hang in there and take hits while hitting receivers open down the field. I saw time and time again yesterday. I also saw him get racked a couple times, lose the ball in the middle of the field. But you know what? You're going to take hits like that. But yeah, I don't think there's any reason that Tulane wouldn't be able to be LSU. To be honest, if they play like they played against us yesterday, and LSU plays like they played against UCLA, anything could happen. Honestly,
anything can. And before we move off of that Sooners game completely, the last thing I will say about that is I think I always say this. I had a background in law and a lot of debate, and I always say I think that usually the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So we have some people saying, oh, Tulane was just really good. Other people saying, OU may have been a bit overrated coming into this. I don't necessarily know that I agree with that. Although, Eric, to your point in saying that, it is hard to say that coming off of the performance yesterday, right? Just arguing that maybe they shouldn't have been too. Yeah. But I also think we need to give credit to Tulane. And that's why I really wanted to say that during this show.
Yeah.
Tulane schemed great. I think the truth is in the middle, right? Yeah. OU should have played better. Tulane played very, very well. Very, very well. Now, the one game, man, that I think I was looking forward to, and I think the college football world in and of themselves were looking forward to, was Georgia-Clemson. What did you think coming out of that game? Because Clemson, they struggled offensively, man. Wow.
Yeah, they really did. And I was, again, me and my wife were talking earlier, and I said, I think DJ – He struggled. He did.
He struggled.
I mean, their offensive line struggled. We said their offensive line wasn't the greatest. We've been saying that for a little bit. And then again, you got. I feel like you do have to talk about who they're going up against. Like you said, they got the dogs have some dogs over there. And Georgia's defense, I think I took more than anything out of that game. I took that Georgia's defense is legit. And as good as DJ Ukulele looked at times last year, especially that Notre Dame game where he threw for 400 yards, looked like, man, second coming of, I don't know who you want to.
Fantastic last year.
Yeah, I don't know who you want to compare him to. 6'5" with a can. He's kind of thicker. I don't want to say Jamarcus Russell at all because I don't like throwing that name out there. But regardless,
he's an interesting comp. To your point, just a freak body size. You see taller guys, but not like built the way he is, man.
Yeah.
Just freakish.
Looks like he could play defensive lineman if he put a couple more pounds on. Yeah. But no, he looked really good last year. And again, you think, okay, maybe in the offseason, obviously everything's new coming to a full season, even if he played sparingly last year. But to go against that defense in your first real game as the starter, that's tough. That is tough. And it's even tougher when your offensive line is not giving you any help.
None at all. None at all. Bama once says, I think Braswell and Sanders split the reps until one takes over. Talking about that Chris Allen injury for Bama, I wanted to highlight some of this because I've seen a few people asking. So before I hit my Georgia-Clemson, my take on the Chris Allen injury for anybody in here curious, Drew Sanders is an individual with supreme athleticism. I believe it was the 4th down on the goal line. If you go back and watch, he absolutely blasted his man into the interior, cutting off King's Lane. He's got a lot to learn. Very talented. So whether it's Braswell, whether it's Sanders, whether it's Turner, I think we need to understand right now that as Alabama fans, we're very lucky that even though we have a guy that is meaningful as Chris Allen is get hurt, I just named all 5 stars that could back him up. All of those guys were 5 stars coming out of high school, all of them unbelievably talented. So it's so terrible to see anybody get hurt week 1, especially a super senior. You know what I mean? That hurts. But, week 1, there's a lot of talent for us to look to as Alabama fans. It's going to be an uphill battle getting them to where Allen was, but that's part of the football game, man. As sad as it is to say, it really is. But Rat says Georgia and Clemson both tied for worst in the country. It is really hard to say anything positive about Clemson's offensive line. Eric points out multiple times, and he's right for saying so, 7 sacks. And I don't know what else you can do if you're Clemson when you're looking at that game and your offensive line was that anemic. And here's something I'm really interested in hearing from you. I'm very interested in hearing from Chad as well. Right now, here's this fascinating part about Clemson. Going into this game, I've posited the scenario where if Clemson lost this game, could they get to the playoffs? Because the ACC is very weak. They really don't have that game to say, okay, well, we won this.
Yep.
They are in a bigger problem now than I could have imagined. And here's the reason. Because if North Carolina doesn't get upset and they have a good year, at least if Clemson beats North Carolina in the championship, they can say, oh, well, we beat a ranked North Carolina.
Yeah.
The problem is right now the top two teams outside of Clemson, at least the top two that we presumed in the ACC, got upset in North Carolina and dismantled in Miami. Yep. So now Clemson loses that game, and they don't even have anybody in their division to really turn to. I mean, they didn't before, but now they really don't have anybody they turn to.
Yep.
Do you believe that this Georgia offense is going to be one that comes together and can actually really start scoring on teams? And I guess the real question, did you think it was Georgia's offense not being together or Clemson's defense is that good?
I think it's a little bit of both. Like you said, truth is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Obviously, I hate ever even talking about Clemson's defense because it just brings up bad memories of how we ran Brent Venables off and how he should still be here in Oklahoma. But I digress. No, I think Brent Venables is one of the best defensive coordinators in all of college football, and I think he's proven that over and over again. And so, obviously, you can look at last year, even the year before against LSU, and say, well, they got carved up 2 years in a row in the college football playoff. And I don't know what to say to that besides, they were young in some spots as well as just the talent that was there, like LSU we talked about before. And then Justin Fields just had, that's probably the best game of his career against Clemson last year as well. And so some of that is youth and inexperience. Some of it is other talent. But, when Clemson's getting guys like Brian Breezy, who, probably could have started on most college football rosters when he was a junior in high school, and guys like that, they're going to continue to be really good at defense, especially on the defensive line. They always have been. And so I think a big part of it was that Clemson looked really good. But Georgia, I expected them to look better than they did. JT Daniels, I don't think looked as good as I thought he could. I didn't think their running game was as good as I thought it would look. When you have a game that ends up 10-3, you can say was the defense is just that good. But also I think that you have to look at the offenses and what they provided. And so at the end of the day, what I saw was that Georgia maybe was a little bit overrated, and they have time. It's week 1, so I'm not going to freak out at all. But also that Clemson's defense maybe is returning to form.
Yeah. And you know what? Matthew makes a really good point where he says Georgia will be scary once they get Darnell, Pickens, Blaylock, and Burton. This Georgia team, man, Matthew, this is a really good point because it is something that I don't want to pass by without mentioning.
Yeah.
They had a lot of injuries
going
into this game. And then you talk about all of those, and that's not even to talk about the Eric Gilbert situation, which would fracture a locker room, right? Even if it's not the biggest deal, that would cause some friction in a locker room. So hats off to Georgia for even being able to go out there and perform the way they did. I think that one of the things that Bobby Wagner posts right here that is true. Clemson has always had an average offensive line. It's just that they had mobile quarterbacks. I can agree that maybe the offensive line for Clemson hasn't been what we would think it would be when we're talking about the quarterbacks they had. But at the same time, that offensive line was just not good, right? Like a different level of not good yesterday for Clemson. And there's really not another way I can talk about it other than they just weren't good. Anytime you have a guy who's 19 of 37, 178 yards passing, 4.8 average, and a QBR of 36.7, that's an indication that something is very awry, right? Very awry. So right now, before we move on to the next game, where would you rank Georgia coming off of this win?
I put them at 2.
That's fair. That's about what I would do. If I'm giving my top 4 right now, Alabama stays number 1. They played great. I'd put Georgia 2, but it's a very soft 2 because of the offense. But to Chat's credit, to Eric's credit, to all of you, Matthew's credit, they had a lot out. And we cannot overlook that.
Yeah.
Eric says Georgia's at 3. Eric, who would you put at 2? Because I can get the argument depending on who your 2 is. So we'll talk about that. I'd put Ohio State probably at 3, OU at 4. But, if you were to flip that, I wouldn't have qualms with it by any. Clemson is the worst. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all, Bobby. They really haven't. They really haven't had the best offensive line. Well, Eric, I'm really interested in hearing who you'd put it to, but before we get that, I want to talk about the most Big Ten game I've ever seen in my entire life in Penn State, Wisconsin. And this was great to me because this was a huge, huge result. If you're Penn State coming off of the year you just had, the Penn State defense looked great. What was your big takeaway from that?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Grinding out type of game.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think that James Franklin, I won't say he's on the hot seat, but I think people were just kind of questioning if he's hit his ceiling as the coach there. And I don't know if even a win over Wisconsin can say that, but it's a big win. It's a big one on the road in your first week too. I'm not sold on Sean Clifford. I haven't been for a while, even after yesterday. But at the end of the day, I think you have to give Penn State props for going into a hostile stadium like Camp Randall and getting the dub, even if it was ugly to watch.
Yeah, it was not pretty to watch. Frightening truth and frightening. We're going to talk about Texas. I've been seeing your messages. That's absolutely going to come up because y'all really did impress. So, absolutely you've earned that. He says OU at 4 still seems high. I can understand the sentiment to that. I truly can. I really, really can. But here's my thing. They were still a top 4 team going into this week, and they won, right? No matter how they looked, they got a W in a game where Tulane did play well. And if we're saying OU at 4, I think then we need to kind of reevaluate where we put Ohio State, because then we're really reading into how a team won. And I get Minnesota and Tulane are different, but the logic of the statement kind of still rings true, that then we're really nitpicking how you won. And to be honest, I didn't see anybody that I thought had a good enough win to just usurp, that like A&M handled Kent State, but A&M should have handled Kent State, right?
Correct.
Like that, I'm going to give them props, but not that big. I think Texas, frightening to your point, will have a big rise. I was very impressed, but I still don't know that it's enough for a top 4. And so that's why I do keep OU in that top 4. Eric came back and said, Alabama, OSU, Georgia, Clemson, OU. I do disagree with your last 2. I wouldn't put Clemson in there, but I do agree with the OSU and Georgia being interchangeable. That's why I asked where he would put Georgia, if not 2, because Ohio State was the one I would want. But I can't put Clemson in the top 4 coming off of a loss. Not when they gave up 7 sacks.
And they scored 3 points too. So I don't get that.
If it was a fantastic game, you know what I mean? Where it's like both defenses played great, both offenses played great. Maybe we're having a different conversation. Even then, it's way too soon. But I can't give the Clemson that top 4. Eric asked, who's better than OU as a dark horse? UCLA, just a shot in the dark after week 1 of play. That'd be an interesting game. But even then, I think that's a pretty big rise for UCLA. And the reason is because LSU was ranked 16th, but that's the same LSU team we saw last year, right? Losing games that they shouldn't have lost to.
Yeah.
Eric says they went up against what you believe to be the number 2, and it was 1 score. Correct, but they weren't able to move the ball. or DJU had a QBR of 32. They had 7 sacks. And my question to you now is, okay, let's say we line up Clemson against Oklahoma. I know Oklahoma's defense didn't play up to par yesterday, But that was a Clemson offensive line that gave up a ton of sacks. And Nick Bonito is an individual that had the highest win rate in college football last year at beating offensive linemen. Their quarterback isn't mobile enough to really escape a vaunted pass rush, and they had no running game. So anytime you look at that right there, I don't know how they would keep in the top 4, right? Because I look at them, Clemson against Bama right now. Will Anderson would have himself a field day against that Clemson offensive line. Let's just be honest right now. And so I hear you. He said they went up against what I believe to be number 2. It was one score. I hear you. But at the end of the day, the reason why I do put Georgia number 2 is because they won a game that was a top 5 game. So I do give them credit there. But that's also why I told you, Eric, that if you put Ohio State at 2, I wouldn't be mad because Georgia's offense was anemic. So I can't put Clemson in the top 4. Maybe they can get back there, but I just can't. Now, the last game, man, I don't want to take up your whole Sunday. It's been awesome, bro, having you on. This has been an absolute blast. Absolute blast. Let's talk about Texas. Frightening. I know you're going to want to talk about some Texas talk. Flashing the horns down naturally. Texas looked good yesterday, man. Like I don't think there's any other way to slice it.
Nope.
They played an opponent that was well coached and returned a lot of talent. Billy Napier is an individual who I've said, if you're trying to look and find who the next guy is to take that helm, Billy Napier is one of those dudes. He absolutely is one of those guys that will be that next name. As an OU fan, what do you think watching that Texas game?
Yeah, I mean, Texas did what they were supposed to do, which you haven't been able to say about Texas in the last couple of years. It's been kind of up and down with Herman. Every once in a while, you never know how they're necessarily going to perform, but they came out and they look like the team I think that they're supposed to look like. You know, Hudson Card did some really nice things. Casey Thompson did some good things and limited action, just showing that, you know, if they needed to ever flip-flop, that they'd probably still be comfortable. Bijan Robinson, like we talked about earlier, is just
unbelievable, man. Can you believe Pro Football Focus? I have a love-hate relationship with Pro Football Focus. I think that they do so much good stuff, but at the same time, sometimes I'm just kind of left scratching my head at some of their stuff. Like they didn't, in their Pro Football Focus top 50 players in the nation, Bijan Robinson wasn't included.
Nuts.
I don't know how they had 4 running backs over Bijan. And I'm like, look, I'm an Alabama fan. I have no reason to lie on a running back. Bijan is that nice. Like he really, really is that nice. He's very good. I think the one thing I was really impressed by is we saw Bijan getting involved in the passing game in a way that makes Texas very dangerous. Now, for those of you that have been around the channel, frightening, I'm going to need you to back me up here. One of the things I've been saying for a long time about Texas is I think they're third in the Big 12 talent-wise, as far as because they don't return a coaching staff. They don't return a quarterback. They replace all of that. But I did think Texas could surprise some people depending on scheme. And the scheme that I was talking about is the way they utilized Bijan yesterday because he's such a mismatch. Attacking linebackers, the pre-snap motion, very impressive. What'd you think about Hudson Card?
I thought he looked good. For real. I thought he was mobile. Thought he made really good throws. Thought he was accurate. I think, probably the decision making was probably his best attribute yesterday. You know, that's something that Longhorn fan got on Sam Ehlinger about sometimes. Like he'd be able to roll in the games with his legs, but him holding on to the ball too long sometimes, or just where he decided to go with the ball at times. Texas fans I know didn't love. And so I think you have to be excited if you're a Texas fan to see not only what Hudson Card did, but like you said, the way Bijan Robinson was used, the way Jordan Whittington looked well. They look good. And so obviously it's not just week one, whether good or bad, is not an indictment on the rest of the season necessarily. You know, you still got to play your games. But again, they dispatched what everybody believes was a good Louisiana team, beat them by 20. And so that's all you can ask for, especially to start out somebody's head coaching career. a ranked win by 20 points, I'd be cool with that. So Texas fans should be happy.
And Texas fans, I'm going to tell you what I think you should be the happiest about. Louisiana, they predicate their offense off the run. You held that offense to 2.6 average yards per carry, which allowed the quarterback never to get into the rhythm which he wanted. And this was a very good quarterback. Let's not get things twisted. Levi Lewis is a very talented individual. He's got a lot of upside, well coached, and you did your thing. I mean, you really did your thing. I've always been big that I thought Xavier Worthy would be big for this offense. I mean, that speed he has is just going to open everything up for everybody around him, right? Yeah. It's one of those things where the stat sheet isn't going to show it. And, Frightening says he disagrees with my Texas saying third talent-wise. That's fair. I think you understand, though, like where I'm coming from when I put Texas third. That's just the lack of continuity is huge at the coaching position. But if we're looking at the landscape of the Big 12 right now, I mean, the Big 12 just became incredibly interesting, right? Yeah. I mean, Iowa State struggled. Texas looks good. How does TCU continue going? I'm very, very interested now in the Big 12 and how this is going to wrap up, because Texas, I think, could shake them things up in that conference.
Yeah, I agree. I think Texas absolutely has the talent to compete in the Big 12. There's no reason they shouldn't. Their recruiting classes under Herman were never bad. They're always going to be very good recruiting at Texas. I've historically said this. Texas will always recruit well. They have the richest football program in America, so they should not recruit well. No matter what their last decade has looked like, they still recruit well. So if you get some success behind that's scary to think about, to be honest with you. But as I continue on, Texas should scare a lot of Big 12 teams. I'm not an Oklahoma fan that's like, oh, Texas sucks. Like, I want Texas to be good, because I think when Texas is good, it makes us look better. It makes the Big 12 look better, even though we're about to go to the SEC, so forget that anyway. But the rivalry just is better when Texas is actually good. I know we give each other crap or whatnot, but
college football is better when Texas is good. And I say the same thing about USC.
Yeah.
It's better.
Yeah, it just is. And I think the way Texas looked yesterday, more than necessarily offensively, because I think you thought you were going to get obviously good things with Sark in there. Just the way the defense looked, even in their first year under Pete. I don't even know how to say his last name.
Kwiatkowski. Yeah.
Is it Kwiatkowski? Is that what it is?
I think, and I probably just butchered it. So don't. I'm confidently wrong.
I think for the most part, they should be happy with the way the defense played yesterday, especially the rush defense. They got a really decent defensive line, I think, this year. I think they can continue to go up from there. Keontae Coburn is really good. I think he'll probably be one of the best defensive tackles in the Big 12 this year, personally. But, yeah, you can't sleep on them just because it's their first year. They have the talent to win. Now. Obviously, I don't think they'll be OU. I don't think that they'll win the Big 12, but they could. I really believe that they could if things work out for them.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few things I want to hit in the comments. Gary says if Sark uses Bijan like he did Najee last year, that could be scary. 100% agree. I've said this at length. Yep. The thing, I mean, I could go on what made Alabama's offense, so deadly last year. But one of the things was you never knew what Alabama was going to do, because Najee Harris could go from the I form to then being split out wide as a wide receiver. Yep. in a two-play span. So the defense never knew what to do because he could line up anywhere. He provided so much fluidity that a defense never could get ready. So I do agree with that. Bobby says that we all see it wasn't Sark that had Bama's offense rolling last year. It was great players in the Alabama's offensive system. I think both can be true. Yeah. Right. Like there's no discounting, right? Because if you look at it, Kiffin had success, DeBall had success, Loxley had success, and now Bob's having success. So it absolutely is the players, the system that has been established. But Sark is still a really good coordinator. I'd be very remiss if I said that. Jant Sports in the house. Bro, how are you, my man? You need to hop in here with us one time. If y'all don't know, go hit up Jant Sports on YouTube. He said line Bijan in the slaughter out wide. Absolutely. That's what I'm saying, man. Same thing with y'all for Eric Gray, right? Yep. It's that same versatility. How do you want it?
Yeah.
We got it.
Yeah. And we didn't even do that yesterday, which is why I said, like, as much as like I can see people freaking out about the offense in general, it's more on the offensive line, and then on top of that, I think Lincoln was very super duper vanilla yesterday. And I think anybody that's seen Lincoln Riley's schemes and his play calling knows that. And we still scored 40. Probably still should have scored 60. Depending on drop touchdown passes and whatnot. But yeah, I agree. Eric Gray is going to be used in the same way. It's scary to have a versatile player like that you can split out. Like you said, defenses aren't going to know what to do. Mismatch. And Bijan, to his credit, is not only he's just different. I'm not even going to compare to anybody. He's just different. His speed, but his power at the same time, balance, elusiveness. It's just like, oh yeah, he's
got
nasty.
it. You know what I mean? Whatever you want, he's got it. And he's such a unique running back, man. Like I'm not a Longhorn fan, and I was offended when he wasn't on the Pro Football Focus top 50. I was offended.
I'm a rival, and then I was pissed off. I was like, "What? Are you serious? Who's better than him at the running back position?"
We're gonna close it down here soon, but Eric, I do want to address you're talking about Oregon in the chat, and you know what? We're gonna talk about some Oregon because people are saying their quarterback had a rough outing and they want to see Ty Thompson. Hey, I want to see Ty Thompson too. I loved this kid coming out of high school, and I hate the injury to Kayvon Thibodeau. Oregon is a really unique team, man, because if they can come together and if USC continues to get good, Washington didn't help the Pac's chances yesterday, but that I want nothing more than Oregon to be good. I don't know how you feel about Oregon, but I really find myself rooting for them to get it together.
Well, somebody in the Pac-12 needs to, right? The Pac-12 has been dead as a conference for a little bit. They haven't had anybody really come up that could be on the scene nationally. And so Oregon's kind of one of those that you think can be, along with USC. But Oregon has the talent to do it. I mean, Mario Cristobal's done a really good job of recruiting up there. It's hard to not recruit up there with what you have with Nike and whatnot in the Oregon family. But at the end of the day, I think that when you look at Oregon, they have always been somebody that people think is overrated, and I don't think that they've ever really been able to knock that off. They haven't won a national championship, even when they got there with Marcus Mariota. It was a really good game. And Auburn ended up pulling it out. But wait, was that the same year? No, that's a different year, right? Am I wrong?
No,
or is that the same year? I'm right.
You got it.
Marcus Mariota, they played Cam Newton. For whatever reason, my mind was tweaking. But anyways, really that's the one time you say, okay, Oregon showed up on a national stage. Besides that, they've always kind of been seen as overrated, kind of honestly similar to Oklahoma. The only thing is Oklahoma has, previous national championships to put behind. Oregon doesn't have any. And so I think that they have the potential. You see what Justin Herbert's doing in the league. I think that they have definitely a potential to have good QBs, good skill position players. Kayvon Thibodeau, again, like prayers up to him. Did they say it was ACL or not?
I haven't heard anything on that. I haven't heard anything.
I haven't either. I didn't know. I just know that he had a significant injury. But again, they're continuing to recruit like that, and so there's no reason they shouldn't be able to treat a Pac-12 like OU has treated a Big 12 the last couple of years.
No doubt.
There's no reason they shouldn't be dominating, and so you kind of have to wonder, hey, what's the reason you haven't won multiple Pac-12 championships in a row? You have the talent. You're literally more talented than everybody in your conference, even USC, because USC's just been down, even recruiting wise, they've been down. So what's kind of going on? So we'll have to see where they take it from here. Obviously, yesterday wasn't a great look having Fresno State push you that way, but I'm not going to talk much because we did have Tulane push us. So.
Man, let's go through some of these comments, right? And to close out on the Oregon, I'm an Alabama fan. I love our two middle linebackers. I wouldn't trade them for the world. And Henry To'oTo'o, Christian Harris, even behind that, Jalen Moody, Deontay Lawson, the list goes on and on and on. What we can't argue, though, no matter who your inside linebackers are, is that Oregon doesn't have one of the most exciting duo at the inside linebacker position in Noah Sewell and Justin Flo. Right? Yeah. Coming out of high school, every team in the nation wanted those two, and Sewell is incredible. He's so much fun to watch. frightening. Asked if Bill O'Brien was brought in when we revamped the offense a couple years at Bama. Asked, yeah, that absolutely. He was a consultant when we were flipping the offensive schemes. And that's why I was always of the belief it would be a seamless transition.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you've ever looked into Bill O'Brien. Terrible GM, right? Terrible GM, but
trash.
Brilliant offensive mind. His route modification work is unbelievable, and it's so much fun to work through. So that was something that I was very excited seeing, that he came back and looked so good. Someone said UCLA looks good so far. Yeah, I think they absolutely do. Absolutely do.
No doubt about that.
Let's see. Gary says for all of his experience, he thought Rattler played nervous, didn't seem confident to you. I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how much of it was, Rain not being there. Rain was projected to be the starting center. I know they said he had some heart issues, if I'm not mistaken, and so he didn't play hardly at all. I don't know if he started or not, or if he wasn't even in the game. I was working at the time when the game was going on, so I couldn't tell, but I knew Kong was in there the majority of the time. And when you're used to taking snaps from a specific player, or you gel with a specific player during fall camp, it's different, especially at the center position, which is the most important position on the offensive line to me. Second important being left tackle. Obviously, I know left tackle is important, especially as a quarterback. But if your center's not legit, then you're going to be all over the place. If we didn't have Creed Humphrey the last 2 years, our offensive line would have looked even worse than they had. But anyways, to go with that, I just think he wasn't trusting of the offensive line, which I don't necessarily blame him. And I also think sometimes he locks on to guys like Stodner and Mims are two of his favorites, which is fine. But he doesn't see the field sometimes when he's acting like that. Well, we talked about his first interception where he just threw it in triple coverage to Mims when he had Gray open in the flat for at least 15 to 20-yard gain if he wanted it. One thing I hate that Spencer does is he consistently, for whatever reason, floats backwards. I can't stand that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I forgot to touch on that, but thank you. So that really bothered me.
I don't know what he's doing. I'm like, bro, and some of the stuff, some of the throws, some of the sacks he took last year, I'm like, bro, if you stepped up in the pocket, you maybe have a couple more times. You maybe have a little bit more time to actually go through your reads. You have a little bit more time to hit a throw accurately and step into it instead of fading back. I know you have the arm talent, but it's time to get out of that, right? And I'm not sure why he didn't look confident yesterday. Besides, that's all I can say is maybe the offensive line, because offensive line didn't look good, and just the fact that he just wasn't trusting. I mean, I think that's all I can really say about it. But like you said, that's the one thing that makes me very, very upset is his floating back consistently. Almost every drop back he has, I'm like, come on, man, you're better than that. And I know he's better than that. And so you got to hope he fixes that. I think he will. Like you said, Lincoln Riley couldn't be with a better quarterbacks coach, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I'm going to mispronounce this. Shibuti 554. They said it completely right. He does a little fadeaway. And I'm not exactly sure why, but it's something that I think worked in high school, and it's just never gotten broke. Yeah. Jance asked if the Oklahoma secondary looked improved.
Last night or yesterday? Absolutely not.
No, and they really picked on Woody Washington. I mean, they really picked on Woody Washington. I mean, it didn't. To be very honest, it didn't. Hopefully it gets better. There are some young guys in there. There's some inexperienced guys in there. So hopefully it will get better, but it didn't look a whole lot better yesterday. Sark. Let me see. Let's see. Is there any games that you saw yesterday you wanted to hit on before we close out?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Indiana got blown out.
You know what? Let's talk about that. Because that was, and someone said Iowa, right on schedule, especially because we were just talking about the Big 12. Iowa State has to deal with Iowa.
Man.
That running back, man, he's got some get up and go.
Yeah.
He has got some get up and go. What did you think about that game? Because it was perplexing from start to finish for me.
Yeah, I actually didn't get a chance to watch it. I just saw the score, but I was shocked at how bad Michael Penix's stat line was. And again, I'm not the guy that just goes into games like, oh, a stat line, because I know stat lines don't always tell the whole story, right? But it was pretty bad, and that was shocking because that was somebody that was looking to take a step forward this year. It was also shocking. Would they give up 31 points?
It was 34-6.
34. It was shocking to see IU's defense give up 34 points because they were pretty good last year, and they really returned mostly everybody. So you thought that they were going to be at least better, correct? They did return
They
everybody,
returned a
right?
lot. They returned a lot.
That's what I thought, and you would think they're going to be better. And again, one game is one game, but yeah, 34-6 is not a good look, especially starting out I think this is the first time, not I won't say ever, but in a while that they've been preseason top 25, and to come out like that is not, yeah.
I was an individual really looking forward to seeing Penix play, and I don't think there's a way to slice it. You don't walk out of a game with a 14.3 QBR, and
Yeah,
that's
you know,
not good.
not a way to
That
win
is
games.
not good at all, especially for a quarterback that had so much expectations. And I'm very interested to see Iowa, because Iowa's quarterback, it's not like they had a banner day passing. 13 of 27, 154 yards, 5.4 yards average, QBR of 79. But that running game for Iowa, I mean, that Tyler Goodson, very talented, as chat said. Anytime you throw 2 pick sixes, that's not good. And yes, y'all heard me right. The
14.3.
QBR
That's
for
nuts.
Penix was 14.3. That's
bad, man.
You can't win with that. You just can't.
I'm over here getting on Spencer Rattler going 30 of 39, 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 2 picks, but 14.3, dog.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah. It's not good. Man, before we go, I think the last thing I want to ask you, what's up, Michael? What's up? The last thing I want to ask you is, if you could pick probably your most surprising story of the weekend and your most disappointing story of the weekend, what would that be for you?
Honestly, I promise I'm not a homer. I don't try to be that. But the most surprising story of the weekend was how Tulane looked for me. I didn't, especially, man, coming off of the week that they had, not being in their own backyard, being in Birmingham. A lot of their players that are from that area having to deal with, are my grandparents okay? Are my parents okay? In the back of their mind. But for them to come into a place like Norman, and now it wasn't Norman as it is typically on a Saturday, right? We weren't 86,000 strong, but even still, to come into a place like that, and to play that the way they did, not only to be like basically being blown out for a quarter and then come back almost all the way back and win, I think, and continuing with their circumstances is probably my best story of the weekend. Just to see that.
I can't disagree at all. I really can't.
My worst story of the weekend, probably gonna have to be Washington losing to Montana. That was FCS Montana. I'm like, and you ranked? That was shocking to me. I was like, seriously, 13-7, y'all scored 7 points. I'm not mad at their defense up there. I mean, 13 points. Like, it's not bad to give up 13 points to FCS school. We've seen people do it all the time, but normally it's like 67 to 13, something like that. But 7 points? What happened?
Especially in the modern era, right? Like, this isn't 2005. This is an offensive era, and it was anemic, absolutely anemic. So I just for the sake of intrigue, I'm going to pick 2 different ones.
Okay.
All right. Just for the sake of intrigue. But I do very much well agree, right? As much as I think we can talk about, oh, you didn't do this, oh, you didn't do that. If you've been here since the beginning, you've heard me said it. Tulane had a hell of a game plan. They had a hell of a scheme. I'm not letting OU off the hook by any stretch of the imagination. Absolutely not. A lot needs to be improved upon from the secondary, offensive line, linebacker, and Spencer's got to come with something. But let's call a spade a spade. Tulane had great scheming. They had a plan of action that you could tell they spent all summer working on, and they played inspired. And the week they had, hats off to them. Absolutely. I think my most surprising thing of the weekend was the Clemson and Georgia game and the lack of offense in it.
Yeah.
Those were two teams we were looking at thinking that was a lot of expectations upon, and nothing happened.
Yep.
And probably my biggest disappointment, even though I'm not necessarily disappointed as a rival fan, UCLA and LSU. LSU is in a position where last year we can excuse a little bit of how they were because, one, it was a COVID year, right? I don't buy that excuse of, oh, we didn't care because it was a COVID year. That doesn't get it. But they lost a lot of talent in a COVID year. They had a lot of things shake up. So I understood them being less than we thought they would be.
Yep.
But that was unbelievable how they got dominated physically by UCLA. And this is a UCLA team, mind you, that, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in the chat, hadn't won a game to a non-con opponent like LSU, right? Like they hadn't won a big game like that. This is Chip Kelly's biggest win and one of Edo's worst losses, if we're being very honest. Rat says, can we talk about Notre Dame and FSU? You know what? I think that's a perfect way to close this out, talking about the game this evening, because this is a historic game we're getting. Yep. You know what I mean? This is an absolutely great game. What are you looking for in this FSU Notre Dame game?
I'm looking to see if FSU is going to have a pulse because they haven't for the past couple of years. And if they can come out and beat Notre Dame, I think it's a good start to the new era. And on top of that, they're going to potentially set themselves up for future success and the ability to maybe, I don't want to say usurp Clemson, but at least give Clemson a run for their money in the ACC.
Hopefully.
Because Florida State fell off, that's the reason Clemson is doing what they're doing now, really. Now, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have beat FSU consistently, but FSU fell off very quickly after 2013. And it, again, gave way to the rise of Clemson and, them just beating up on the ACC. I'm also looking to see how Jack Cohn looked for Notre Dame. I'm not sure what he's looked like. He didn't play all last year. Is that correct?
I don't believe so.
Graham Mertz took over. And so I don't think we've seen him, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think we've seen him in 2 years. So I want to see how he looks. Obviously, Notre Dame has struggled historically the last 10 years, probably 10, 15 years maybe, at the quarterback position. Just guys that can't really get it done when they need them to, guys that aren't transcendent. And I think that's what's held them back a lot of the time. Their defense has been pretty decent for the most part, decent to really good. And they've had running backs that can get it done a little bit, but their quarterbacks and their skill position players haven't always been the greatest, especially the last 10 years or so. So I'm looking to see what Jack Cohn looks like tonight. But if FSU can pull off an upset, then it could be good things for them.
You know that meme that's been going around here recently of The Simpsons where they're saying, just inject it in me? Yeah. Just inject Mackenzie Milton coming back from that leg injury and now looking to take the reins of Florida State into me. I want nothing more than for him to come back and have a sensational game tonight. What a story that would be. Yeah. And that's, at the end of the day, y'all, we give each other hell, right? That's what sports is about. We talk, we do all that. But at the end of the day, this is about storylines like that, about perseverance, about the testament of human spirit and what the willingness and want to can get you. And that's why, to me, this is such a big deal, right? Because Mackenzie Milton going through it all, and now he's coming back. It's just an unbelievable story, something I'm very excited to see. Plus, I have major questions about Notre Dame. You lose Ian Book, what happens, right? I don't know. Yeah. Notre Dame, arguably, right? They went to the playoffs last year, and it didn't go well. But I just don't know what I expect from Notre Dame. They need to get into a conference.
I agree.
And that's just my opinion. Some people might disagree. That is what it is. Guys, I cannot thank y'all enough for coming in here. This has been a ton of fun. I want any of y'all to do me a favor. If you're into college football content and you're into more content than just your team, or you're a Sooner fan, go hit up Indy Sooners YouTube channel. Great, great content. We're going to link it in the comments once everything gets finalized, gets posted. But you'll be seeing him again very soon. We're going to be doing stuff like this more often, man. I had an absolute blast. I cannot thank you enough for doing the very first stream on the Around the Table Sports YouTube channel and being a part of that with me, man. It's been a great time.
Man, it was so dope. Thanks for having me on. It's been great to connect with you, man. I watched some of your videos about half a year ago. Started watching them, and I saw you comment on one of my videos. Like, oh snap! I was like, oh, what's up, dude? So just the fact that we were gonna be able to connect, and I can't remember if it was who got us connected initially, but it was amazing just to see you and see your willingness to even let me come on, and give me a platform for sure. And yeah, I can't wait to be back on, man. It was a huge blast, and thanks for all you do and talking college football the way you do, man.
Man, I one of the things some people know, I was all set to go into law, right? And I really haven't talked about this at length. I thought I was going into law, and in 2018, I was really big into moot court, all that for my university, all set to go to law school. But I always kind of knew it wasn't what I loved to do. I was just very good at argumentation, litigation, anything like that. But around that time, I had a situation where my father was killed in a car crash. And this was an individual who did what he loved as a career.
Yeah.
And when he was killed in that car crash, it really opened up to me that it wasn't worth doing something I didn't love. And so for me, you even coming on here, man, this is like therapy for me, coming on this mic, talking college football. And that's why I always say I really do appreciate the support from other channels, the support from the chat. Like this is a therapy session for me. And y'all have made it an environment to where I can talk about what I love and have people interact. And it really is a blessing. And it's something I take very, very, close to my heart, because it's just an unbelievable experience. So for y'all to take the time out of your day to just interact, man, it's awesome. So I can't thank everybody enough. Indy, you got anything you want to close on?
No, man. Hey, I love hearing your heart, man. And I can relate to you on fathers being gone. My dad died this past January.
Man, I'm really sorry to hear
COVID.
that.
So I can hear that, man. And I just can't help but thinking your dad's proud of you, and what you're doing, and you living your passion. Just like people have told me, my dad's proud of me and me doing this, and that was another reason I kind of really jumped into the Indy Sooner YouTube channel, was because when my dad left as well, I just was like, you know what, I need to stop messing around. I need to do my passion. My other passion, I'm an athletic director, so I do that.
Awesome.
That's my full-time job. So that is actually, I love that. I love doing that. But this is like kind of my other thing. I love talking football. Love talking college football, Sooner football. It's a big passion of mine. So, nah, man, thank you for spaces like yours and giving me a platform, and everybody else you will give a platform to in the chat and everything. It's just really good to have community like this. And this is what college football is about, man. It's having community like this that you can rally around. College football, we can drag each other around sometimes, but like you said earlier, you put it best. At the end of the day, it's a brotherhood, really.
Absolutely. This, guys, this is going to be the norm. Every week, I'm going to be doing multiple live streams from here on out, and other content creators are going to be coming on. So you will be seeing Indy Sooner on this live multiple times throughout the season. That's no doubt about that right there, man. I'm really sorry to hear about your dad, but like you said to me, there's no doubt in my mind that he's proud, man. You're doing a great job, and to come as far as you have, as quickly as you have, as someone who does YouTube, that's impressive, man. Just keep on it, and we're going to continue growing, man. There's a lot of college football for us to talk about. I'm going to be talking to you throughout this week, getting things situated. For everybody in the chat, thank y'all so much. And
thank you.
That's about it from me, man.
Yep. All right, y'all. Boomer. It's been good.
Hey, roll tide. Thank y'all. Later.